What if the most common map of the world, the one you learned in school, has been subtly shaping your understanding of global power for centuries? Welcome to Geo Capitalist, where we decode global wealth one map at a time. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. Because in this video, we're unpacking World Geography Lied, the truth about power, trade, and the future. Go ahead and grab your coffee, because it's not what it looks like on the surface. Imagine a world where Greenland, a massive ice sheet with a small population, appears larger than the entire continent of Africa, home to over 1 billion people and immense resources. This is not a hypothetical scenario. It is the reality presented by the Mercator projection, a map designed for 16th century sailors, not for accurately depicting the geopolitical landscape of the 21st century. This single visual distortion has profound implications, quietly influencing how we perceive the importance and influence of nations. The Mercator map was a revolutionary tool for its time, enabling navigators to plot a straight course across oceans with unparalleled accuracy. Its design preserves angles and shapes locally, which was critical for colonial-era maritime trade and expansion. However, this navigational utility came at a great cost to geographical truth. Land masses near the poles are stretched to enormous proportions, while those near the equator are compressed. This visual bias has historically exaggerated the size and perceived dominance of European and North American nations, while diminishing the scale of countries in Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia, a legacy that lingers in our collective consciousness. This is more than just a cartographic curiosity. It is a fundamental flaw in how we visualize the world and its power dynamics. When our primary tool for understanding global geography is inherently skewed, our assumptions about trade, influence, and economic potential can become equally distorted. The map on the wall is not just a passive representation of land and sea. It actively frames our worldview, reinforcing outdated notions of a global hierarchy that no longer reflect the complex, interconnected reality of modern international relations. Our mental picture of the world may be fundamentally misaligned with its economic and demographic truth. The consequence is a subtle but powerful cognitive dissonance. We might intellectually know that certain emerging economies are growing rapidly, but our visual intuition, shaped by these distorted maps, struggles to keep pace. This gap between perception and reality can lead to significant miscalculations in assessing future trends, investment opportunities, and the shifting centers of global influence. To truly understand the world as it is and where it is headed, we must first recognize the limitations of the maps we have been taught to trust. We need to look beyond the familiar lines and see the world in its true proportions. This persistent distortion is precisely why understanding the intersection of geography, wealth, and power is more critical than ever. The lines on a map are only the beginning of the story, and often they conceal more than they reveal about the true forces shaping our planet. The real levers of influence are found not just in territory, but in the control of trade routes, the flow of capital, and the development of infrastructure that connects the globe in ways old maps could never illustrate. Our world is being rewired by economic currents, creating a new geography of power that demands a new perspective. The famous Mercator projection wasn't intended as a political tool. Created in 1569 by Gerardus Mercator, it served a practical purpose: navigation. It allowed mariners to plot courses across oceans with ease. This was a breakthrough for the age of discovery, empowering European fleets. The map was a tool of commerce and conquest, designed to facilitate movement. This utility came with a compromise. To flatten the Earth, the Mercator projection distorts land masses away from the equator. Regions like Europe, Russia, and North America appear larger. Greenland looks as large as Africa, but Africa is 14 times bigger. This misrepresentation has subtly embedded a northern-centric view for centuries. This distortion has real-world implications, reinforcing outdated notions of power. It's crucial to understand what world geography gets wrong about power. Maps carry the baggage of their era. The Mercator map, from a European perspective, presents a world where Europe is visually central. This bias can make it difficult to grasp the scale of shifts in the global South. To understand the modern world, we need to correct this distortion and see continents in their true proportions. To appreciate the scale of this cartographic illusion, consider the continent of Africa. On a Mercator map, it appears deceptively modest in size. In reality, Africa's land area is immense, large enough to comfortably contain the United States, China, India, Japan, and most of Europe combined. This geographical fact carries enormous economic and demographic weight. The continent is home to over 1.4 billion people and holds a vast repository of the world's critical mineral resources. When our most common visual aid shrinks this powerhouse, it subtly diminishes our perception of its current and future role in the global economy. Alternatives to the Mercator, like the Gall-Peters projection, attempt to correct this by accurately representing land area, though at the cost of distorting shape. While these equal area maps are more geographically honest, they have never achieved the same ubiquity. The result is that generations have been educated with a skewed visual understanding of the globe. A surprising data point illustrates this. The combined population of China and India alone is nearly 3 billion people, yet the land masses of Russia and Canada, with a combined population of less than 200 million, appear far larger on a Mercator map. This disconnect between visual size and human presence is profound. This matters now more than ever because the centers of economic gravity are shifting. Nations in the Southern Hemisphere are experiencing rapid growth, building new infrastructure, and forging new trade partnerships. An accurate mental map is essential for comprehending the scale of these developments. For instance, understanding the true size and proximity of countries in the Indo-Pacific region provides a clearer context for the burgeoning trade flows and strategic alliances forming there. A distorted map can make these connections seem less significant or logical than they actually are, obscuring major geopolitical and economic trends from view. Ultimately, these map distortions highlight a central theme. What we see frames what we believe. If our foundational image of the world is based on a projection that exaggerates the power of the past and minimizes the scale of the future, our strategic thinking will be flawed. To accurately assess the landscape of global power, we must look beyond these cartographic relics. Beyond map projections lies another illusion: the political border. These lines, drawn and enforced, appear as permanent separations. However, many borders are recent inventions, often drawn by colonial powers with little regard for local realities. They sliced through communities and imposed a rigid political geography onto fluid human landscapes. These artificial lines create a powerful illusion of separation. This legacy can be seen across continents. The straight-line borders were products of distant negotiations between empires designed to demarcate colonial possessions, not to create viable, cohesive nation-states. As a result, many countries today contain diverse groups with stronger ties to communities across the border. This shapes the political stability and economic potential of entire regions. The economic consequences of these boundaries are profound. A border can transform a bustling trade hub into a peripheral outpost. It creates friction where commerce once flowed freely. Crossing a national border can have a trade-dampening effect. The political lines on a map are not just symbolic, they are powerful economic barriers. In our interconnected world, economic activity spills across these divides. Supply chains and labor markets do not neatly align with national boundaries. The illusion is believing that these lines represent an absolute economic reality. They are often obstacles to be navigated. Understanding this helps us see beyond the static political map to the dynamic economic geography underneath. Cross-border regions often hold the key to future growth. While borders are designed to divide, they also serve as critical points of connection, acting as gateways for the flow of goods, capital, and people. The illusion is that these lines create impermeable seals, but the reality is far more porous. Every official crossing point is a testament to the powerful economic forces that push for integration, driving trillions of dollars in trade annually. The very existence of customs agencies and border infrastructure highlights a fundamental truth. Economies are not self-contained islands. They are deeply reliant on their ability to interact with the world beyond their politically defined edges, making border zones of intense economic activity rather than empty dividing lines. For centuries, global trade has hinged on a few strategic maritime choke points, like the Suez Canal, Strait of Malacca, and Panama Canal. Control over these narrow passages has meant economic and strategic power, shaping the fortunes of nations and empires. Today, the Suez Canal alone handles about 12% of global trade, while the Strait of Malacca sees nearly a third of all shipping. This concentration brings both efficiency and vulnerability. Any disruption can send shockwaves through global supply chains. To bypass vulnerable choke points, new trade routes are being built across continents. The Belt and Road Initiative is the most ambitious, connecting Asia, Europe, and Africa with railways, ports, and digital networks. A freight train from China to Germany now takes just 15 days. Half the time of sea freight, making landlocked regions vital new hubs. This isn't just economics, it's geopolitics. Infrastructure means influence. By building these routes, nations set the terms of trade and forge new alliances. The shift from sea to land corridors is redrawing the map of global power. Arctic shipping routes are also emerging, promising even faster links between Europe and Asia. The static map of continents is giving way to a dynamic web of connections. To truly understand this new world, we must look beyond traditional maps, sometimes all the way from space. As trade routes shift, so does the world's economic architecture. The BRICS bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, has grown into a powerful coalition, now expanded to include new members from the Middle East, Africa, and Latin America. Together, they represent over 45% of the world's population and a major share of global resources. BRICS is building its own financial institutions. A key BRICS strategy is reducing reliance on the U.S. dollar in global trade. For decades, the dollar's dominance has given the U.S. immense leverage. Now, BRICS and others are settling more trade in local currencies, challenging the dollar's supremacy. Bilateral deals in yuan, rupees, and rubles are on the rise, especially for energy sales. Alternative payment systems like China's CAPs are being built to rival SWIFT. This is financial infrastructure for a multipolar world. Multiple hubs, not just one. The goal: insulate economies from U.S. policy and sanctions and create a more resilient global system. The real map of power is now drawn with currency flows and payment networks. Traditional maps miss this shift. The new geography of finance is invisible on paper. To see it, we must look at the data, and sometimes from space. Traditional maps show borders, but not how we actually use the planet. From orbit Satellite imagery reveals the real geography of human activity. Cities, ports, and transport networks glowing at night. Nighttime lights pinpoint economic engines, not just big countries. This data challenges old assumptions. Small, bright nations can be economic powerhouses. The true map of prosperity is written in light, visible only from space. Satellites now let us map the world's true economic gravity. We can track ships, count cars in factory lots, and measure crop yields from space. This real-time data reveals the pulse of global supply chains and the health of key ports. Surges or backlogs in activity show where bottlenecks or booms are happening instantly. Economic power is no longer just about GDP, it's about operational capacity and connectivity. The world is a network of vital nodes and arteries, not just a patchwork of countries. Building and controlling infrastructure, ports, railways, digital networks, means pulling more weight in the global system. This is the new soft power shaping the flows that drive the world economy. The economic gravity map shows influence by activity and connection, not just by size. In the 21st century, influence is often wielded not through overt force, but through the more subtle yet powerful tools of soft power. One of the most tangible forms of this influence is the financing, construction, and operation of critical infrastructure in other nations. When a country builds a port, a railway, or a power grid for another, it's doing more than just providing a service. It's creating a long-term relationship of economic dependency and strategic alignment. These concrete and steel projects are the physical architecture of modern influence, embedding a nation's standards, technology, and commercial interests deep within another's economy for decades to come. A surprising fact that illustrates this trend is the global expansion of port operations. A handful of state-backed and private companies now manage a vast network of container terminals across the globe, far from their home countries. For example, major terminal operators from China and the United Arab Emirates control dozens of strategic port facilities across Europe, Africa, Asia, and Latin America. This gives them significant insight into and a degree of control over global trade flows. Owning the keys to another country's primary commercial gateway is a potent form of economic leverage, shaping trade patterns and supply chain logistics on a global scale. This strategy extends beyond ports to encompass digital infrastructure as well. The construction of undersea fiber optic cables, 5G networks, and data centers represents another frontier of soft power competition. The entity that builds a nation's digital backbone often sets the technical standards and may have preferential access to the data that flows through it. This creates a powerful and enduring technological linkage between nations. Control over the physical and digital conduits of commerce is really a quiet but decisive way to shape the economic destiny of other countries, locking them into a particular technological ecosystem and sphere of influence for a generation or more. The strategic insight is that infrastructure is not neutral. It is a vehicle for projecting power and securing national interests abroad without deploying a single soldier. By becoming the indispensable partner for development, a nation can foster goodwill, secure access to resources, and ensure that global trade routes are oriented in its favor. This form of influence is far more resilient and publicly acceptable than traditional forms of coercion. It is the quiet work of building the world in your own image, one port, one railway, and one data network at a time, a process entirely invisible on a standard political map. The power to build infrastructure is directly tied to the power to finance it. The vast sums of capital required for these multi-billion-dollar projects give creditor nations enormous sway over borrower nations. Development banks and state-backed investment funds are the primary engines of this financial soft power. By offering loans for projects that commercial banks might deem too risky, these institutions can steer the economic priorities of entire regions. The terms of these loans can shape a country's domestic and foreign policies for years, creating a relationship that is as much political as it is financial. Many modern infrastructure loans are secured by the project's future revenue streams or even by physical assets as collateral. In some cases, if a borrower defaults on a loan for a port, the lending entity may have the right to take over its operation for an extended period, sometimes up to 99 years. This transforms financial leverage into direct operational control over strategic infrastructure, altering the balance of power between nations. This financial architecture is creating a new map of global dependency that is layered on top of the political map. Nations that become heavily indebted to a single foreign power may find their sovereign decision-making constrained. This creates a subtle but powerful sphere of influence, where financial ties translate directly into geopolitical alignment. The ultimate insight is that the flow of capital is one of the most powerful forces shaping the future of global geography. Understanding who is financing the world's new infrastructure is key to understanding who will hold influence in the decades to come. Traditional world maps often depict the Arctic as a vast, empty, and inaccessible wasteland. For centuries, this perception was largely accurate, as permanent ice cover made the region a frozen barrier. However, climate change is rapidly transforming this reality, turning what was once a permanent obstacle into a revolutionary maritime frontier. As polar ice recedes, new shipping lanes are becoming navigable, most notably the northern sea route along Russia's coast. This shift is unlocking a region rich in resources and strategic value. The economic implications are immense. Just as the Arctic frontier is opening up, another, even more profound geographical shift is occurring beyond the planet's surface. The new high grounds of the 21st century are not mountains or plateaus, but the digital realm and the orbits above Earth. These domains represent new frontiers for commerce, communication, and influence that are largely invisible on any traditional map. The global economy is now critically dependent on a vast network of undersea fiber optic cables and increasingly on constellations of satellites that provide everything from GPS navigation and financial transaction timing to high-speed internet in remote locations. We began this journey with a simple premise. The maps we trust to show us the world are often misleading. They distort size, creating illusions of power that are relics of a bygone era. They draw sharp, definitive borders over lands where culture and commerce have flowed for centuries. This traditional view of geography, based on static lines and fixed territories, is no longer sufficient to explain the forces shaping our planet. The world is not a collection of isolated landmasses, but a deeply interconnected system of flows, of capital, goods, data, and influence. To navigate this new reality, we require a new kind of map, one that is dynamic and multi-layered. Throughout our analysis, we have seen how this new map is being drawn. It is being etched by new trade routes like the Belt and Road Initiative, which are rewiring the connections between continents and creating new economic centers of gravity. It is being shaped by new alliances like the expanded BRICS, which are building parallel financial systems to challenge the old economic order. The key takeaway is that geography is not destiny, but it is the stage upon which destiny unfolds. The physical realities of our planet still matter immensely, but they are being actively reshaped by human ingenuity and strategic competition. The distortions of old maps, the illusions of static borders, and the vulnerabilities of traditional choke points are all being challenged by new infrastructure, new alliances, and new technologies. Recognizing these changes is the first step toward understanding the true dynamics of global power and the future trajectory of the world economy. It allows us to look beyond the headlines and see the deeper currents at play. That's the geography behind what world geography gets wrong about power, trade, and the future. The world is more complex and interconnected than any single map can possibly show. The forces of trade, finance, and technology are creating a new reality that demands a more sophisticated understanding. Our mental models must evolve to keep pace with a planet that is being rewired before our very eyes. By looking at the flows of capital, the networks of infrastructure, and the data from above, we can begin to see the outlines of the world to come, a world of new centers, new connections, and new frontiers. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, I recommend watching my next video on how resource scarcity is creating new geopolitical hotspots around the globe. It builds directly on the ideas we have explored today, showing how the competition for essential materials is another powerful force redrawing the map of influence. This is the kind of analysis we specialize in, connecting the dots between the physical world and the global economy. It is a perspective you will not find anywhere else. To continue seeing the world through this strategic lens, be sure to subscribe to our channel, Geo Capitalist, because maps don't lie, but they don't always tell the whole truth. We are here to show you the rest of the story. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.